Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life.
Pats,
Brendo, you
Hey.
sober?
I'm sober. Why am I sober?
Why are you sober? I don't know. It's a rare occurrence.
Because it's before 11 a.m.
Oh, that is a good point.
on a Saturday. I've actually been shit all week. So obviously Bitcoin Live was huge for everyone, me probably especially.
Yeah, you had the big one. There's a couple of guys had a big one. I've had a really sore throat all week because I've been talking too much.
Well, and also I think because I was crook as in the car coming back on the Tuesday. Wednesday I felt like crap. Thursday went back to work, felt like crap, and then I was off crook again yesterday. I'm only now starting to feel semi-normal. But you know what? Entirely worth it.
Yeah. So all the Bitcoin doctors reach out to Brendo. He needs help. Maybe they can do anything about throats. I would recommend some recommendations.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't even talk. Right.
What?
So we have been telling, not deliberately, but sort of telling a story via the pod, which is kind of cool. We have a guest on this morning, and he is the most returned guest, I'm guessing.
Well, he was last time, so and again. So I would imagine it's probably 4 to.
It's a bit of an arm wrestle between Daz and Owen, right?
Oh yeah.
So, but Owen's thing is more. We've sort of been accidentally telling a story, and I'm sort of, really, it was the first we met a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago, I guess, at the first bush bash at Marunda.
Yep.
And then we went to his farm.
Yep.
And then we caught up with him when he was first doing his when he's first going to like his scoping exercise in El Salvador.
Yep.
Is that 3? Yeah, that's the no. There was another. Then there was a 4th, and we spoke when he was living next door to the president's mum.
Yep.
And now he's back. Owen, how are you, mate?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Is it really 5 times now?
Oh, it's at least 4.
It's
4 or 5.
Four,
yeah.
It's 5 including the bush bash, but 4 pods.
Okay, gotcha. 4 pods. Cool. Yeah, great to be back.
I just
very
quickly,
I better say.
Sorry, mate. Just very quickly, if anybody wants to just do this in order, I will put the notes to the correct episode for each of those. So if anybody wants to listen to Owen's story up until now, go back and go in the show notes. You'll find the links, no problem. Sorry, Owen, go for it.
I'm extremely forgetful, so I might actually do that myself. It will be indeed. It's like telling the story of journaling my journey with to living in El Salvador and starting the beef business over here. Yeah. And I just thought I'd better say for the international listeners that the word crook is Australian for feeling unwell.
Oh, did I say crook?
Yeah.
You said you've been feeling crook, and no one knows what that means.
Is that right?
There are so many Australian words that nobody knows what it means.
I'm feeling under the weather.
And what do you call a doctor again? A quack.
A quack. Oh, I've never said that. Anyway.
There's loads of Australianisms that are kind of odd.
So what time you got over there at the moment, mate?
It's 6 p.m. here, Friday evening, so I'm having a wild night in.
Well, you got whiskey though. Did you not tell us you had a whiskey?
I am having a 1 whiskey, yeah.
Oh, okay, well we were on the coffee this morning. So, mate, how are you? Firstly,
very well. Been very busy.
Yeah, we can see
living
that.
down the beach now. Living down the beach now in El Salvador, and started the beef business. So I can't remember like when we last spoke. We talked about it, and I may have said that I was looking around.
Yeah,
I think you'd only been in El Salvador maybe a month or 2.
So, yeah.
At most.
Yeah.
So yeah. How long you been there now then? What would that be?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah. And I've just been looking around. I wasn't sure if I had it in my mind there are several business ideas, and there are so many opportunities here. It's just crazy. But I eventually just kept an eye out and kept asking around and visiting farms, and eventually found a fantastic farm. So just jumped in and started the beef business. And we came up with, I was going to call it carnes locales naturales, which is like local natural meats in Spanish. But I've had this sort of joke name, beef back better. Mm-hmm. And anyway, eventually we just decided to go with beef back better because it's just catchy. And I'll meet people and they're like, oh, you're beef back better from Twitter or whatever. Yep. Even people who don't get the reference to build back better. It's weird. Like most people have already forgotten that. the Build Back Better. Remember the Build Back Better campaign? All of the Trudeau and all these Muppets were saying it at the one time. You remember that, right?
The true transitory.
Yeah.
And then it just disappeared. Build Back Better. But even though most people don't remember the joke, that's still a catchy name. So Beef Back Better is a thing now.
So can you walk us through, I guess, the process of what you did to actually start, exploring farms and I guess the beef industry over there, and how you could kind of inject yourself into that space?
Yeah, well, I was just asking around, and just as I met people, just asking around, everyone I met, and every time we'd go motorcycling in the hills or whenever I'd see some cattle, I'd try to ask in my terrible Spanish whoever was around about the cattle, and it's a small country, and sort of everyone's only 1 or 2 degrees of separation apart, so it actually didn't really take that long. Didn't take much active work to eventually be put in touch with someone who had this incredible farm and even has a processing facility, abattoir, on the farm already.
Wow.
And they were keen, and one of them speaks English, so it's just all. So we just kind of dived in after only 1 meeting and 1 visit to that farm. We were like, all right, when we're going to pick one and kill one, and then I was like, oh, I got to buy some freezers, and I got to buy a vacuum packing machine, and I got to do all this stuff now, and just been doing it just in time, and it's been going for a couple of months now, and we're sort of still selling out, so hopefully we'll keep the schedule up. So we found this. We visited a couple of farms that weren't suitable, and I just still wasn't sure if I would ever actually find a really good cattle farm here, because there's not really a very good cattle industry. There's not really a good agriculture industry here. It's a completely war-torn sort of third world country. So, and agriculture especially seems to be very poorly developed, which is also an opportunity, because the big chemical companies and the big agriculture companies haven't come in yet, although the sugarcane industry is pretty intensive and fair bit of chemical usage, but and coffee as well. But for the most part, the agricultural development here is very poor, and most of the facilities are not sort of regulated in any way, or there's things aren't refrigerated and things aren't clean and all that stuff. So we've had to work on all of those areas, and we've got it to an acceptable level and improving each time as well. And now I'm just working too hard. I want to go back to my semi-retired lifestyle of the first few months here.
But the land itself is suitable for it. It's just that it's not developed. Is that what you're saying? Like, it's the opportunity is possible. It's just that it's not been, nobody's done it yet.
Like in the 90s, there was an agrarian reform by the sort of communist government at the time, but they just stole the land from the farmers, and they put limits on the size of the land that you're allowed to own. They gave it to their friends, and then after that was the Civil War, and then after that was the gang violence. So I suppose I think that's roughly what just saw the decimation of agriculture. A lot of the fruit and vegetables come in from Guatemala, where there's commercial farms like you'd be familiar with seeing. There aren't really commercial, industrial, even mechanized farms here. But there is really good country, and there are areas where there's irrigation, and that, because we've just come through a dry season, and man, it is dry. When it's the dry season here, it's dry. It basically didn't rain for probably 4 months. Like, it's pretty much 6 months wet season, 6 months dry season, but you get the sort of shoulder seasons. So it stopped raining in October at the end of October, just after I got here, and we basically haven't had a drop of rain since November, and it just started again this week, and absolutely pissing down in the evenings now. But through that long 3 or 4 or 5 months of no rain, most of the country gets very dry gradually, and it's really dusty up in the hills. It looks more like a really arid place. But now, in another month, it'll look all lush and green again.
Were you aware of that when you went over that kind of cycle? Or do
Not
you get there and go, oh shit, this isn't going to happen?
Not really. I didn't know the extent of the dry season. It's quite impressive how dusty and dry it is. And then in the wet season, equally, it's just like insane how much water comes down. But there are some areas that there's still excellent soil, and the guys that are doing cropping, they're usually growing corn and sorghum for animal feed, and they also grow beans, and that's the main thing. And that's mostly hand sown and hand harvested on the steep slopes just during the wet season. And during the dry, it's just they graze it off and then they just let it, and they're kind of burning it at the moment, which might not be the best thing to do. But anyway, it's so that they can clear it to plant again. But then there are these low-lying areas that have water, and they've got beautiful deep volcanic soil, and there's groundwater. There's all this groundwater, and it just comes out of the ground. They don't even have to put a bore in; it just comes out of the ground, and some of this area
all year round.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the direct translation from Spanish is birth water. So they have this birth water coming out of the ground, and the farms that can use that for irrigation during the dry season are obviously just laughing. And the farm that I found is in one of these areas, but most of that land's been developed for sugarcane now, and they sort of spray the shit out of it and use synthetic fertilizers and herbicides and all of that. But this area, these farms that I found that are all owned by one group of guys, they've just stuck to cattle only, and they do a little bit of milk, but mostly beef, and they're doing really well. And they do rotational grazing, and they use no herbicides, no synthetic fertilizers. They do a bit of composting. They're doing pretty much all of the things that some of the best regenerative / organic cattle producers in Australia do, but they're doing it just because it works and because it's most profitable, most productive. They're not doing it to access any sort of market or to impress anyone. They're just doing it because it works. So it was pretty cool to find them.
And what were they like? Who was their market before you came along? Like who?
They supply. So most of the beef in El Salvador is imported, and mostly from Nicaragua, and it's a lot of it is just the worst of the worst. Like the beef here at the supermarket, it's terrible in my opinion. Some of it's grass-fed, but a lot of it is grain finished, so it's come from a feedlot or a concentrated animal feeding operation. So it's had months and months of antibiotics and hormone growth promotants and GMO feed, and been locked in a yard with no access to pasture for weeks or months. All of those great things that modern agriculture came up with. And then to make things worse, this is the thing that really surprised me, they then pack that meat in a chemical brine, which is 10% of the weight of the steak that you buy is made up of water and a bunch of chemicals that are preservatives and flavor enhancers and tenderizing chemicals, texture agents. And that's why some of the steaks you get here, at first you sort of take a bite and you're like, oh, that's amazing. It melts in your mouth and it has a delicious flavor. But I first noticed when I didn't put any salt on it that it's already really salty and sweet. And some of them are so melt in your mouth that it's impossible. It's not natural. And that's because they use these synthetic chemicals to soften the meat. And I'd never come across that before in Australia. I'd never come across companies putting chemical additives in a steak.
I saw a video only recently, actually. Whether you shared it, I'm not sure.
The injection thing.
Yeah, injecting directly into the beef, and I think I read that it was water, but it could be other things, I suppose. But what is the purpose? Is it to tenderize? Is it to actually bulk out the weight so they can, get higher profits for less meat? Is it all of the above?
Yeah. I mean, water. That's a little bonus. I don't know. You'd have to ask a fiat food technologist exactly why and how they're trying to justify their job in their multinational food company. But I think that it probably evolved because to make a steak, to tender and have a good texture and have a good flavor, you generally need to age it for at least a week or maybe 2 or even longer if you see stuff at a restaurant that's aged for 30 or 40 days or whatever. And that just means keeping it in a dryish area or just above freezing, not frozen, but not too warm so it doesn't spoil. So, but the problem with keeping all of your meat in a cool room for a week or 2 is that it costs a lot to keep the fridge running, and it blocks up it takes up all the space, and companies want to just get that product out the door rather than having to sit on it. Like, this is a problem for cheesemakers and so on that have got to sit on their product for 6 months or whatever. It's just all this money tied up sitting in a cool room. They want to just sell it quickly. So I think when they worked out that they could use chemicals to tenderize and then more chemicals to improve the flavor, that they're like, whoa, this is just chemically aged. We don't need to do that. We don't need to hold up the supply chain anymore. So that makes sense. I'm not sure that's how it evolved. That's sort of what I've inferred. And then adding water, that's just a bit of a bonus. That's just a 10% discount, 10% rip-off.
Wow.
Yeah, and the machines for injecting, I saw the same clip, and it's just crazy. I've worked for many years. I worked as an organic inspector and organic consultant, and I've seen many companies, many of the larger companies that have different grocery lines, and they'll have a whole team of food technologists working there. But when they have to develop the organic product, because I won't mention any names, but there are several examples of this. They're told by senior management, or they've just been bought out by a big company or something, and they've said, okay, you've got to develop an organic version of this. And then I would help them with reviewing all the ingredients and just telling them if it's going to be allowed or not. And normally all of this synthetic rubbish is not allowed for an organic product. And so the food technologists are like, oh, whoa, geez, what are we going to do? So they make it without the product, without all the additives, and the product's fine. It's perfectly fine. So the food technologists are then embarrassed because management maybe realised they don't actually need all these guys to put these 10 or 20 additives in their product that they've just proven are not necessary, because the organic one's just as good and doesn't have all that rubbish in it. So it's fiat incentives in play there, I think. So that's my biggest sales pitch for the beef here, is that it's got no additives, and also that it's local and totally grass-fed. So there's a lot of people that are interested in that.
Are they big beef eaters over there?
Yeah, they love eating meat here. Yeah, but it's not as common. Usually it's pork and chicken.
That's just a cost, or?
Yeah, I think it's partly to do with the cost, and seafood is cheap here too. So seafood, chicken and pork are more common, but people still eat a fair bit of beef, but it's just rubbish, like the stuff they bring in from Nicaragua, and it gets frozen and thawed out several times on its way across 2 borders, and
Jesus,
it doesn't matter because it's full of synthetic preservatives, so don't worry about it. And I mean, you can get premium imported from premium in inverted commas imported from the USA, which is feedlot, and it's very tender and it's very fatty and it's pretty nice, but it's still drenched in the same chemicals, and that's not the type of stuff I want to eat. But unfortunately, it sets the bar. We have had a couple of customers not happy with the level of tenderness. I think that, like, the ribeyes and the T-bones are really tender, but some of the other cuts are sort of not as tender. And I think it's these synthetically softened meats has set the bar too high. Like, sometimes you buy these big T-bones here, the premium in inverted commas, tomahawk steaks, those big tomahawk steaks, you get them at the supermarket here, they look great, and they just melt in your mouth, and it's just because they're drenched in these chemicals, and those chemicals do the same thing to your stomach that they do to that meat. But I think it's setting the expectation too high. Like, I like eating a steak that you have to kind of chew a little bit to get through it. But, yeah.
And who are your customers? Are you looking at locals? Are you looking at restaurants? Are you looking at shops? Are you looking at Bitcoiners? What's or everyone?
It's mostly expats, and it's only about half Bitcoiners though. There are a fair few expats living here that aren't Bitcoiners and who are health conscious, and so we've managed to find them. And they're in San Salvador in the city, and they're also along the beach here from San Blas across to El Zonte, which is all within an hour and a half's drive of support each other. And we have a few local customers too, which I'm really excited about, and I might start doing like a budget pack as well, targeted it to try to get some more of the local customers. But the biggest hold up with some of the local customers is that I only accept Bitcoin, and some of them don't know how to use it still.
Okay. So talk us through that then. How's that process been? You're taking Lightning payments, or you're?
Yeah, so we ended up the first couple of kills we just did through just messaging and sending Lightning addresses. But now we have a website, and that's www.beefbackbetter.com. And there's only really one page on that website, which is the one product, which is the mixed beef pack, 7 pounds of grass-fed, local, additive-free beef. And you press add to cart, and then you press pay, and then it goes straight through to Ibex Mercado integration. So it's just the WooCommerce with Ibex integrated, and it's actually pretty good. It's pretty easy to use, and you have to put in doesn't have to be a real name, but it does help to put in your delivery instructions and a real phone number so the driver can contact them, because we deliver on Mondays. And so, yeah, I had James from Nikki and James in El Salvador YouTube channel helped me set up the website, and we integrated Ibex thanks to another friend here, and up and running. And so the way that Ibex works is it just plugs straight into WooCommerce, and if it's Bitcoin only, there are no KYC. They know who I am, so it's kind of semi KYC, I guess, or KYC light. But if you're not using dollars, you don't have to do the full KYC process with passport and all that stuff. And it is Lightning and on-chain is available, and it just sweeps every evening. It sweeps to a selected on-chain address. So it's super easy.
Brilliant.
Sorry, I was just going to say that, so the farmers that you've engaged, what's their kind of position on Bitcoin and versus fiat?
That was a miracle as well. They're into it. They're open to it, and they're supporters of the Bukele government, and we're now paying them partly in Bitcoin. So
awesome.
And of course, it'll be a learning process. Now they're just using Chivo Wallet and Bitcoin Beach Wallet, which is now called Blink, actually. So Chivo Wallet and Blink Wallet. Both of those wallets offer like a dollar option. So in Chivo, you can switch to dollars easily. Only locals can have Chivo Wallet, only citizens. So I don't actually use it, but it has all the banking connections. It's incredible. Every bank here they're all connected through Banco Hipotecario, which is a semi-government bank, sort of like the closest thing to a central bank here, if I understand it correctly. But because they're US dollars only, they don't really have a central bank as such, but they have these banking rails that are super efficient, super fast, and it's integrated into the Chivo wallet. So you can switch back and forth with no fee for dollars back to Bitcoin if you're a local, and you can use Chivo. And foreigners can use the ATMs. So we can, the Chivo ATMs have great rates, and they're very reliable. And Blink Wallet also has another dollar feature. Like if you want to hedge, like if they don't want to just hold through all of the volatility, they want to. So a vendor here wants to put half of the money into dollars, say, to hedge for some of the ups and downs, which a lot of them want to do. You can do it also in Blink Wallet with their feature that's called Stable Sats, which is, it's just like you can switch it over to dollars. So you can switch 25% or 50% or all of it back to dollars. So they're using those two wallets now, and when we get to the point where they've got enough, then I'll have to take them through doing self-custody. So I've got a cold card set aside for them already.
Nice.
So that'll be fun.
Sorry, I missed. Who is the creator of Blink Wallet? Is that a government wallet as well, or?
It's just had a name change from Bitcoin Beach Wallet.
Oh, that's the Beach Wallet. Excuse me, right?
Bitcoin Beach Wallet, yeah. Yep. So that's by Galloy.
Yeah.
By Galloy Bank, and it's the same software. It's the same code as the Bitcoin Jungle app, which is the one they're using in Costa Rica.
Yep.
So it's just a simple mobile Bitcoin wallet.
And you as an
That's-
expat are allowed to have a bank account, or you have your bank account, say in Australia, and your ATM withdrawing in either dollars or use or spending Bitcoin. Do you mind
I
me
don't
asking
have
that?
a bank account here. I can get a bank account here, but I just haven't bothered.
Okay. And in terms of your status in the country, in terms of your like residency status, or where are you with that? Like,
Yeah, I got approved for temporary residency. So that means I can renew that after a year, and then after 2 years, I believe, then I can go to permanent residency, and then I think there's a pathway within a couple more years to then get a passport to be a citizen.
gotcha.
Which is what they say to get a DUI. I don't know what DUI stands for, but DUI is the acronym here for if you're a citizen. It's like a ID number when you get a passport. So I was still a long way off having a passport, but
Yeah.
temporary residency is very quick and easy to achieve here. There are, I think, 17 different visa options.
Is it
And
relatively inexpensive to do that?
Yeah. I mean, it depends. I paid for a premium service from Escape to El Salvador, Jeremy, who is El Salvador Visas on Twitter. So that was like a few $1,000s. But I just wanted someone I could trust and wanted it to happen smoothly and wanted it all done for me, basically. So I'm very happy that I spent that. You can definitely get it more cheaply. The government fees are a fraction of that. But there's a lot of legwork. And if you don't have good Spanish skills and also some cultural understanding, then you can stuff it up. And I've heard some horror stories from other expats here who engaged some cheap guy to do it, and they stuffed it up, and it's then it can make it harder to actually to then be able to fix the problem. So yeah, Jeremy does a great job, and he's now offering free residency applications for children of people who pay for the service, and he can also do company structure setup, and he's basically employing an army of locals, lawyers, accountants, customs agents, and at what he calls the Bitcoin Embassy, just as a bit of a joke name, but it is like that, his place. He also has short-term accommodation there if you need to get here quickly. You can land with Escape to El Salvador, and he's doing some other great work, like doing pro bono work for Venezuelans who have escaped Venezuela and stuff like that, and need help getting legalized here because things are bad there. I've got a Venezuelan working for me now, and he's great. And man, some of the stories from how shit hit the fan there, thanks to the communist government, are interesting. So there's more Venezuelans coming here, as well as Australians and Canadians and lots of Dutch people I've been noticing. So that makes a lot of sense.
But it just shows just like, so a lot of that you're saying he's employing a lot of locals and stuff. Like a lot of that is not captured in the Bitcoin story for El Salvador at all. You know, like that's generating wealth for people that are there. Like there'll be lots of these offshoots that nobody's even looking at, but actually really positive for the country.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the amount of dollars that have been brought in and the amount of know-how and stuff, because there's this huge brain drain here. Like any young people that were smart enough and had the wherewithal and were confident enough would leave the country and start a business in the United States or anywhere but here. And there's still a legacy desire among the young people. Like everyone still wants to get out of here. But it's switching now. The people coming back, and every week I meet people who are coming back after 20 years or 30 years in the United States, and they're so happy to be able to come back here safely, and things are getting better. And
that's wonderful. That really is wonderful.
Yeah,
reuniting
it's cool.
family, really.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that will change quickly for the younger generation. But it's just, there's this huge absence of know-how and I mean, it maybe sounds rude to say it, but intelligence, like the brain drain for decades was real. So but that means there's so many opportunities here.
Sure.
Because they need everything, and they've got almost nothing in terms of just goods and services, just things that you know, like a decent laundromat or some decent local beef or just a good taxi service, or just any business idea you can think of that's already saturated, and there are too many competitors already in Australia, for instance. Here, it seems like it's much easier, and cost of employing people is so much lower. You can actually, and there are still skills here, like they repair things, and they repair things cheaply. They keep cars going. They do upholstery repairs and clothing repairs and all this stuff. There are all these little industries, and so you can employ those people to help create whatever you want to create. And so yeah, if there's any entrepreneurs out there listening, there are a lot of opportunities here.
So as people know, we have the free Zoom. We've mentioned this a couple of times.
Yeah.
And it cuts off. So we get like 40 minutes with a guest, and then we have to embarrassingly say we want to stop. Anyway, we just had it. So, and then we have to wait for the thing to process. We've got about 5 minutes. So Brenda and I were just, while we're waiting, Owen's, getting another drink or something, we're just sort of having a chat. Going, this conversation, I was just trying to imagine what it would be like for like 20-year-old Brendo listening to, the progression of your story, right? And going, like, I understand a lot of the Bitcoiners maybe that listen to this are maybe, 30, 40, 50 plus, maybe not the young, but there will be some guys out there that are maybe like a 20-year-old guy who have,
we met a couple on the weekend.
Or girls,
so, yeah.
Absolutely, right? And they're just listen to this going, holy shit, I could do that. Like, that sounds like maybe you've just, I don't know, finished university, you've come out of school, and you're just going, oh, I'm just, I've got some skills, but there's no jobs, or the jobs are really poorly paid in terms of the cost of living, or like, do you consider the impact that maybe a story like yours might have on somebody, on?
Well, I do sometimes think, like, I wish I had more influence, more entrepreneurial sort of influencers in my life. But then maybe I'm just making an excuse and being selfish or something. But and there probably already are. There's already this subset of people who are already just deciding to do this. They're just like, of course I'll go and try Latin America or Southeast Asia. Of course I'll do that. That's where all the opportunities are. Yeah. But I had no clue that would be something that you would consider when I was in my 20s.
Right. Can I just, why is that, Matt? Is that because of the path that you followed? Because were you like a school, university, normal job, just get a house and live forever and retire? That was the path that you thought was normal?
Maybe not live forever.
Sorry.
Just going to uni. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I put it down to, but I don't mean to cry about it. I've had a very good life. I don't mean to complain, but I put it down to just not knowing people in my life. So I guess what that means is my parents not having friends or my school friends not having parents that were sort of successful entrepreneurs who went and set things up on the frontier. Like people I meet now that in the last decade I've done heaps of traveling, and the people you meet are just so interesting, and often their children are at an international school or they've already lived in 3 different countries, and these kids are just already wide open to the opportunities that exist in other parts of the world. But so I hope you're right, that maybe some Bitcoiners in their 20s who are already starting to wonder about the direction of Australia, and I hope that they're encouraged to travel a bit, and it just makes, it makes huge financial sense to get the hell out of Australia, especially if you're buying Bitcoin, purely because you're not going to pay any capital gains tax here. Like that alone, if you're in your 20s now and you decided to stack some Bitcoin, just not paying capital gains tax on that ever is enough of a reason. Like that could mean millions of dollars in only 10 or 20 years time in your life that you don't have to give the government, any government. So I hope that you're right.
So quickly touching on that then, in terms of setting up your business, are you having to work with a partner? Is the partner the business side, or are you able to do that just as you as the outside Australian? We sort of touched on that, but I wasn't quite sure of like if somebody, what I'm thinking is if somebody is going, okay, I'm 22, I'm going to go there, I think I'm going to be the local flower seller. How do they practically do that?
Well, the concept of sort of like a sole trader exists here. There are hundreds and hundreds of coconut vendors, right? And they don't have companies. So you can come here and just start doing it, and you can accept money. And if you're a foreigner, and especially if you're a Bitcoiner, and you come here and start delivering a service that people want to pay value for, it's very unlikely that you're going to cop any flack. However, you at some point will need to consider setting up a company if you want to be fully compliant with all of the local laws. And there are a lot of local laws. It's not some sort of anarcho-capitalist utopia here. It's very bureaucratic, and the government might do lots of stupid shit, like any government. All governments are bad. This government maybe is the least bad one out there at the moment. So I'm dreading the process that I've already commenced of setting up a company here, and with that, the monthly tax reporting that I'll have to do. But I'm already, I'm basically going to do that. I'm going to comply. So that's already in progress, but it's not completed yet. But at the moment, I'm just a humble coconut vendor, and people are paying me for the product. But there are detailed corporation laws here that, and there are taxes to be paid that I'll have to do eventually.
And there was something I read recently about, was it maybe incentives for like tech businesses or Bitcoin businesses?
No,
what is that?
No tax free.
That's a very, very good point. And that's why I'd like to announce today that Beef Back Better is from now on a food technology business.
Bingo.
Yes.
Bingo.
The tax law, that was pretty huge. And there were sort of rumors and whispers about income to do with Bitcoin not being taxed and stuff like that, but it had never really been written and passed into law. When Bukele says that he's going to propose a bill to whatever the word is, to Congress or to Parliament, when he says he's going to propose a bill, it's going to pass. That's the nature of it at the moment. They have the majority. They have the majority at the moment. So once it's being presented, it means it's going to pass. And the Bitcoin law was one of them, and the digital securities law more recently that makes it difficult for shitcoins was one like that. And this one, the new tax technology tax law or whatever it's called is designed to incentivize industry and technology here, and the tax incentives are enormous. It's basically zero tax on things coming into the country, things going out, no company tax, no capital gains tax if you are in the technology business. So there is a law that's published, and there are categories that you can fit in. If you want to make computers or import and sell computers or develop AI or hopefully maybe use some agribusiness technology and cold chain supply chain traceability systems and stuff like that, which I'll certainly be looking into to see if I can legitimately fit into any of those categories where you pay zero tax. It could be enormous. Like, we could see chip manufacturers setting up here and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to see, but it's I don't know much about it yet, but apparently it's it's a case-by-case approval, and you get a 15-year agreement. So you can get a 15-year agreement from the government here that your company's not going to pay any tax. That's pretty amazing. So hopefully food technology fits.
What about say religious organizations over there? Are they tax free? You know how over here any religious organizations don't pay any tax. Are they?
I don't know. I expect there would be similar allowances for that, being the Savior, being named after Jesus Christ, our sweet Lord Jesus here, that everyone here worships. Mostly Catholic, to a lesser extent, sort of Protestant, but I expect there would be similar tax concessions for churches here. But you don't see, in some countries, some sort of developing countries, you see a lot of like cult kind of weird religions, in the Pacific especially. And I wonder if part of that is the tax incentives, but you don't see a lot of quirky cults here. It's mostly Catholic or at least Christian churchgoers here. Yeah.
Even just like as an anecdotal perspective, you're talking about a low tax environment generally, where things are observably getting better, whereas I would say a lot of people maybe listening to this living in a high tax environment believe things around them are getting worse, right? Just on a very high level. So it just shows you that, I mean, correlation is not causation and everything, but
I don't know I don't know if you could really describe it as low tax environment here. The corporate taxes are similar, income taxes are similar, with the exception of special economic zones like Bitcoin City will be, and with exceptions like Bukele's introducing for technology focused, which I guess there'll be more exceptions coming too.
But are they not the places that are observably getting better? Like that kind of idea?
Well, Bitcoin City's not, these are future things. Like there's nothing there yet. So it's not obvious yet that it's associated with taxes necessarily. I don't think.
But then go down to small scale, go down to El Zonte?
Well, all of these coconut vendors and tiendas, which means small store, none of these guys are corporations. None of them are paying any tax. Okay, so maybe you're right. But
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, mate. I don't know. I'm asking.
These smaller vendors, and everyone's a vendor for something. Like everyone here's working somehow. It's great. Everyone's got a hustle. They're making weaved bags, or they're selling bottles of water on the side of the road when you're in a traffic jam. Like everyone's doing something to make a buck, and it means that everything's at your fingertips. And none of them have got corporations, and none of them are paying tax. So I guess you're right. But it's just like the government, I guess, allows them to do that because they need to survive, and they just forego that tax. But once I don't know where the cutoff is. I'm a little bit in no man's land with my business, perhaps, with the size of my business. Like, when do you have to start complying with the tax laws? Probably it's when the relevant government department says, by the way, you're kind of making some money now. It's time to start paying some taxes.
Yeah.
So I guess you could say that it is a low tax environment if you're poor and if you're struggling and doing one of these jobs, because you don't pay any tax then. Yeah, which is a great thing. I mean, yeah. I sort of related to your question here. I went to Guatemala recently, and I went on the best damn road I've been in Latin America. This highway was incredible, and it was a tollway. And it was fairly expensive, which only means it was still only probably the full length of the road was maybe $10 or less. But there were toll gates, there were maybe half a dozen toll gates at sort of $1 each or something, US dollar, $1.50 maybe. But this highway was incredible. It's the best road in Guatemala. It's probably the best road in Central America, I'm sure of it. And they had clear signage reminding you that this was a private road. And like, in contrast, the government roads, we were driving on a government road into Guatemala, and they'd built they duplicated the road. So it was 4 lanes, so like a dual carriageway, except that they hadn't built any of the bridges. So there's this, you look over to your right and there's another road, another 2-lane road for kilometers and kilometers. And then there's no bridge. And then there's the road again for kilometers and kilometers, and there's no bridge. And that you could see by the look of it, it was 20 years old. Wow. Like that's how dysfunctional the government is. Well, all governments are dysfunctional, but that's how dysfunctional the government is in Guatemala. There's lots of people doing fuck all. Like even in Antigua, Guatemala, there are guys, they're employing a team of 20 guys to work on the cobblestone streets, and I swear they're just digging them up and putting them back in. Like they're doing nothing, these guys. And then suddenly you're on this best highway I've seen, 3 lanes each way, cutting through seriously difficult terrain, big bridges, concrete bridges and everything. And there's a sign every kilometre saying this is a private road. And then they say, wear your seatbelt. And they say, no littering. And then there's another toll gate. And I thought it was a great lesson in capitalism versus communism.
Yeah. I mean, I said this to my wife years ago, like, I do see a future where our cars have like an inbuilt lightning node where we're literally streaming sats to the road as every meter, every 100 meters or every kilometer, whatever it is, right? And it's so totally, and we're starting to see this in little areas, like the streaming of sats, maybe like, the podcasting side of things or the music side of things, we're starting to see it. And the opportunity there is just basically everything. Anywhere you make any value transfer, that's it.
Absolutely. The banks control the payment gateways, and they charge astronomical fees. So on each of those toll booths, you're using a credit card and you're getting hit with like 3 or 5%. Yeah.
Because the absolute microtransaction isn't possible with the current banking infrastructure. The charges are too high. So, but you could bring it down to, a single sat, a meter, or whatever it is, right? And it's kind of going to be possible.
That'd be great to see. I mean, I expect that there will be toll roads like that in El Salvador starting to be built soon.
Awesome.
And here is where it is possible that you will be paying with Lightning, maybe even streaming, or at least just paying at the toll booth with Lightning. They've announced here that they're building light rail and they're building heavy rail here in the next 5 years. They don't have any rail here at the moment, and it's a huge problem because there's so many trucks on the road. So I think that the railway they've announced, I think they've already engaged the contractor, and it's coming from the deep water port up to maybe all the way to the city or part of the way to the city. That's going to be fantastic. Apparently there's a light rail project in the city. There's a great website called El Salvador in English.com, I think. Maybe I'll send you the link to put in the show notes, and it just translates some local news stories that are interesting into English, so you can see what's going on. And it's always good news. It's a great website.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the trains that were running through. I think it was Ohio that were at the time when we were getting a lot. There was a lot of rail problems and crashes and all this stuff. Right, there's been a lot of them. But then, did you see that video of the train coming down, and it was literally going up and down side to side?
Oh yeah.
It was horrific.
Like
no wonder there are accidents, and that's the so-called developed Western world, right?
It's just so badly in decline at the moment, isn't it?
Absolutely. So let's go to Costa Rica. You went.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to go. I wanted to check out Bitcoin Jungle. So for your listeners, we have Bitcoin Beach here in El Salvador, and there's a project in Costa Rica called Bitcoin Jungle. And Costa Rica is a beautiful country. It has the benefits over El Salvador is that it has nature. It has a lot more jungle still. So El Salvador has basically all been cleared and developed for coffee. There's still bush, but there's not really much like real jungle wilderness. There's still wildlife, but there's not like in Costa Rica there are howler monkeys and macaws and stuff, and the bird life, and it's just amazing. And it's protected. There are national parks that are protected, so it's very beautiful. And there was this. I've been waiting for an excuse to go and check out Bitcoin Jungle, and there was a conference on there recently called Nosta Rica, which is about Nosta. So you guys on Nosta yet?
Yes.
Yep.
Good. So notes and other stuff transmitted by relays, which is an interesting project, totally decentralized. At the moment, it's mostly being used as an alternative to Twitter, but theoretically you could use it for anything, basically just an alternative internet. And it's similar to Bitcoin in many ways, in the way that it's censorship resistant, and you can run a node and relay that information on. And this conference was, I think, basically paid for by Jack Dorsey, and he was there, and it was good to hear from him. He seemed genuinely upset about the direction that Twitter took and ended up being, full censorship place, and he seems quite committed to supporting Nosta and and trying to create a censorship resistant internet. And of course there were heaps of Bitcoiners there. And the food was great. It was a really weird conference. It started at 7 a.m. with yoga. And it was, there were a lot of hippies, but they were Bitcoiner hippies, so it was cool. Yeah.
What kind of numbers were there? How many people were there?
They said there were 300 tickets sold, but I think there was only really more like 200 or so people. 250. It was free, which was amazing. Even the food was free, like incredible conference. But Jack paid for it. But I think it meant that some people who booked tickets didn't show up. So maybe 250. And it was in a little, the area that's known as Bitcoin Jungle, the town's called Uvita, U-V-I-T-A. And there are something like 50 vendors there, restaurants and cafes and hairdressers and butcher shops and the supermarket and all these guys accepting Bitcoin. And they're all using the Bitcoin Jungle app, which is the same as the Blink wallet. Only they have a slightly different part. The payment screen is BTC server. So they actually run a BTC server over there themselves, and they help their vendors that they onboard when their balances get to a certain point, they go to the vendor with a cold card and give them a cold card and teach them how to do self-custody. So the work they're doing there at Bitcoin Jungle is really impressive. It's really cool.
Did you spend anything other than Bitcoin while you were there?
I still had to spend some of their local shitcoin and some US dollars. So they use colones and dollars totally at the same time. Often you'll pay with dollars and you'll get colones and change.
Oh, wow.
they'll round down to in their favor each time.
Of course.
But it's amazing how everyone just thinks in both currencies.
Wow.
It's interesting. And the colones had some very bad inflation in the 80s, but it hasn't been too bad inflation-wise. So it's sort of weird that they all use US dollars and colones. But yeah, we did need to spend. I did need to use my bank card on the toll road, and at some of the shops we had to use US dollars and colones shitcoins. But at the farmer's market and at the butcher shop and at some of the restaurants are fantastic. It's pretty expensive there, more expensive than El Salvador, and it's not as safe. There's a crime problem in Costa Rica. Not violent crime, but petty crime is rife. So
Yeah.
I saw a news article the other day saying that they're about to start a crackdown. And I thought that's good news, because I was told by locals there that stuff gets stolen all the time and the police do nothing. That was what they told me. Whereas in El Salvador, nothing seems to get stolen because you get in big trouble. So nobody does it.
Yeah. Consequences, right?
Yeah.
Funnily enough. Funnily enough, their consequences, behaviors change.
Yeah.
Amazing. What amazing thought, right? You had a question.
Oh, I had a question just about, I guess, since we spoke to you, I guess it was maybe 4 months ago, and I know we asked about what, I guess, the general kind of Bitcoin adoption was like over there. And I'm just interested to hear if it's changed in the last few months, in your opinion.
Yeah, good question. I'm thinking now. There are improvements. So Chivo has improved the reliability of the Chivo wallet. The Chivo ATMs are already pretty good. There are the same amount of them. There's been a couple more pop up. There are ATMs in every town, basically.
Are you
like
seeing,
every
are you
reasonable
seeing
sized town.
vendors that you've used when you first turned up that didn't want to take Bitcoin actually now take Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think. There's a bit of a churn at the moment, which makes it a bit hard for me to give a clear answer. For instance, Strike has basically, from what I can see, is basically pulled out of El Salvador.
Oh, wow.
So all these vendors that were using Strike, well, I don't know. And the Strike wallet that they were using didn't actually have anything to do with Bitcoin. It was just, they would just receive it in dollars and it would give the balance in dollars. So you can send Bitcoin to it, but you don't have an option in the Strike app to actually keep anything as Bitcoin. So I don't really think it's a Bitcoin app, to be honest. I'm not.
Is that across the board or just in El Salvador?
I don't know. I got a Strike account here. It took weeks to get verified. And then I sent some Bitcoin to it and it converted it to dollars straight away, Tether, and I can't convert it back. So it's not really a Bitcoin wallet from my point of view. But anyway, so Strike sort of pulled out in some way. So a lot of the vendors that were advertising Strike and were doing promotions where you could get 10% off if you paid with Strike and stuff like that, they've all stopped using Strike, but they seem to have all been picked up by Athena, and they have a new point of sale device. Athena has a new point of sale device which works really well. So a lot of stores are now have a better experience because they've got a new, they were with Strike and now they've got a point of sale device with Athena that works perfectly every time, lightning straight away. So there's an improvement from that point of view. And I think there's just a steady increase in certainly any of the restaurants that we go to. We're always hinting or hassling or but there are some, but unfortunately the other day there's a cafe I've been going to for ages that stopped accepting it, and I can't, because of the language barrier mostly, I can't understand why they stopped it. They were always terrible at keeping the tablet charged. It's like it was always flat. It's like, come on guys, it's pretty basic, just charge the damn thing. It's like, oh no, we don't have enough chargers. You could buy another charger. So I guess they weren't very committed from the start, perhaps. I'm seeing just a gradual increase. I pay almost all of my bills in Bitcoin now. So other than gas, the cooking gas, I have to pay with cash, but and the water, the drinking water, which comes in those 20-litre bottles, I have to pay them in cash, like $2. But everything else, like the rent, the electricity, the mobile phone, the convenience store, the pharmacy, the bottle shop, the supermarket, all paid with Bitcoin.
Awesome.
So it's pretty good.
So what you're saying
Yeah.
is gradual at the moment, and then
It's kind of just gradual, and it's just this gradual orange filling process. Like, and I've even at some places now, I'm even like, well, and it's a bit of, I don't know whether I should use this strategy or not, but if they're being dicks about it, or if they're a big company, I'm like, well, it's the law.
Yeah.
Like, it is actually the law. And I was told the other day by another local that if you actually say to them, well, I might talk to the consumer affairs people,
Yep.
then they will work out how to accept it.
Yep.
But I don't necessarily want to be that pushy. I'd rather people understand the potential benefits and accept it for that reason. But yeah, it's a gradual improvement in acceptance and adoption, but it's just one person at a time. Like, people just still haven't been exposed to it, or just sort of don't get it, or don't understand why. And there's also the element with some of the bigger companies that are anti-Bukele. So I do believe that one of the reasons that the supermarket that here, the only big supermarket here, who Super Selectos, they accept Bitcoin, but it's not very easy. Their point of sale device, the screens often don't have high enough resolution to display a Lightning QR code and stuff like that. Or there's only one aisle that they accept Bitcoin at. So they're technically complying with the law,
It's a big long queue.
But there's already a long queue at every financial transaction here has friction. I don't know why. Everyone's just used to spending 20 minutes to make one sale. They do detailed receipts, and some people are paying with vouchers, and part cash and part card, and one card won't work today, and you just end up in queue for ages. I try to avoid the supermarket altogether, but it may be the case that Super Selectos are not especially keen on trying to improve the level of service for Bitcoiners, because the owner of Super Selectos was the guy who ran against Bukele in the last election. So, and there are other opponents of Bukele who are old money, who own big companies here, who are just passively, delaying. And they're the ones that I'll say, well, it's the law. Like, you got to get with the times now. Yeah.
Well, that's, you sort of have to provide, Bitcoin forces people to provide a genuine service or product or service that people value before they'll part with their sats, right?
Well, that goes back to your example about, a highway that you're paying sats. I think that incentivizes people to go, rather than
fall off the bridge that isn't
well, rather than do a quick drive to the shops, you go, fuck it, I'll walk. So I don't have to,
I mean, sure.
Which then makes a healthier society.
Totally. I mean, it just, if you're parking your wealth in something that you feel is going to get more valuable over time, now getting to that mental places takes a while for people, but if that's what you believe, then you're going to delay your consumption as much as you can, but you're still going to eat, you're still going to, I don't know, have a water, you're still going to wanting to live somewhere, you still want to, have transport. So it becomes the things that you spend your money on are just the things that you truly value, and then the people who provide services that the society truly values are the ones who win. Now, is that not somewhere you want to live? Is that not like a country or a world that you want to live in? That seems quite good to me, right?
Yep. Hey, so Owen, are you gonna come back to Australia for a visit anytime soon? Any plans? Bitcoin Live 2024,
did you feel like you're missing out?
Oh man, I've had a lot of FOMO. I mean, it wasn't just that. It was also the Texas Slims visit and the Walkie Farm stuff and Australian Beef Initiative. The Bush Bashers, of course, and now Bitcoin Alive. Yeah, I've been feeling like I've been missing out, and I am planning a visit later in the year.
Yeah, cool. All right,
cool, man. Well, look us up if you
some
can.
Motorcycling, and we'll do. Yeah, it'd be great to catch up. I might come for a month, maybe later in the year. I reckon in the depths of the wet season here, I might need a bit of a break from. Not that it rains all day; it only rains in the evenings. It just started pissing down just now. Even in the wet season, it only rains in the evenings, and it's actually a little bit cooler in the day because of the clouds. So it's not like it's just raining all the time, but it's. I think after a few months of it, I'll be ready for a break and might come back to Australia for a visit. Just been looking at flights and trying to find a decent deal for later in the year. Yeah.
And if you can't do it this year, maybe aim for April 2024. Because I'm sure the Bitcoin plebs would love to hear your story on
Definitely.
stage.
Definitely.
Bitcoin Alive is already booked in for
Yep, they've
April.
confirmed it again.
Nice. So when's the halving going to be?
It's
going to be
about
around
the
halving
end of
time.
April.
It's like
I think.
we're like 380 days away or something, so it's gonna be
Should
a halving
good.
party. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a big halving party here too, of course. So I'll have to see.
True.
I don't know. I can only be in one place at a time for
That's
the
it, mate.
halving. Shit.
Wow.
You got to
Yeah.
see what you
Yeah,
work
there's
out.
no
what you
time
truly
difference
value.
on the blockchain, is there?
No.
Bitcoin blocks don't wait. It's not like you
got-
can go to one and then fly to the next time zone either. No.
Oh, that's like a halving party on a plane flying around the world.
Yeah. Well,
That'd be quite fun. I really like how Daniel Prince closes off his pod with these. If you got one orange pill left to give, given we've never thought of a question. I never even mentioned this to you. We've never thought of a question that we
you
thought
did
we
it
could
to
offer.
Princey.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I don't remember doing that. But
Yeah.
here's the thing I thought, and well, let's see if this sticks. From the beginning of your time in Bitcoin till today, if you had one piece of advice that you'd tell people either to do or to not do, what do you think that would be?
Don't sell your Bitcoin.
Simple as.
Simple, yeah. Don't sell your Bitcoin.
Perfect.
I mean, yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind. If that's what's the intent of the game, because yeah, I mean, early on when I first experienced the price of Bitcoin doubling since I'd bought some, I sold half, which is a very sensible strategy, which I wish I hadn't done, because that's when it went from Australian dollars. It went from 600 to 1200. Yeah, and I sold half. So
Wow.
And there's
hang
gonna
on
be
to it. Although spend a little bit into the circular economy when you visit anyone who will accept it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm really excited about trying to get here. I'd love to see some farmers markets here, and the fact that my supplier is happy to accept part payment in Bitcoin is so exciting. And so getting that circular economy going here, especially as an alternative for when whatever shitfuckery they're going to do with the international banking system over the next few years, like anything could happen. So we've got infrastructure here available to just smoothly switch to using Bitcoin rather than the US dollars, because for some reason the banking system seizes up. So start spending some, but don't sell large chunks.
That's a great piece of advice.
All right.
Mate, I really look forward to number 5. We'll do it again. We'll leave it a couple of months and see where you're getting to, and I look forward to the update.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, and if you guys make it over here, any of your listeners coming to El Salvador, be sure to check out beefbackbetter.com and order a pack and pay with Lightning, and you'll get some good quality beef delivered rather than the stuff that's full of chemical additives.
Awesome. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.